What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about the newest film from director Steven Soderbergh. And Steven has a wild array of films in his catalog as of now. Just going back through and just looking through his filmography, I've seen quite a large portion of the films that Steven has made. And if there's one thing that I'll really commend him for, he does whatever the hell he wants. He really just jumps into a project and says, this is my vision, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do everything that I can to accomplish it to the best of my ability. And I always commend directors that do that. I think that it's really awesome when people kind of just throw caution to the wind and do whatever makes sense for them. And I was really fascinated to watch this movie, number one, when it was announced that the entire film was through the perspective of the ghost haunting this house. I thought that was a really neat idea. And then on top of it, not only did Soderbergh direct this, he also was the cinematographer and he edited it, which is a daunting task for anyone to take on when they're creating a movie. I know this was done for a very, very, very small budget, which made me very excited to see what he could pull off here. And the movie I want to be discussing with you today is Presence. Presence is directed by Steven Soderbergh. The family becomes convinced they are not alone after moving into their new home in the suburbs. So I was really excited to watch this movie. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Soderbergh's. I think he has a really fantastic catalog throughout his career. And I really liked this movie. It's definitely not perfect. There's some logistical flaws in it that even thinking about it now, I'm just like, okay, it doesn't necessarily like logically line up for me. And I'm sure there can be arguments made to the counter where it's like, okay, but it's not necessarily supposed to logistically make sense. But all those things aside, it's a really fascinating meditation on grief and family dynamics and even like gaslighting. And I think the way those elements are handled make the movie a really fascinating watch, and I'm really excited to tell you about it today. So at the beginning of the movie, we're literally jumped into this house and we're seeing a ghost or a spirit or whatever you want to call it just wandering the halls of this house, and we're doing that through the point of view perspective of this ghost. Well, soon after, a family moves in to the home, a husband and wife and a son and a daughter. Lucy Liu being the actress that people will recognize right away, and Julia Fox actually is in the beginning of the movie as the realtor, which I thought was really cool. They all move into this house together, and we learn through dialogue between the family that something has happened with the young daughter. She experienced a person dying, and it's been weighing incredibly heavy on her. And they moved to this area because the son is an incredibly talented athlete, and they wanted to get him into a school district that he could succeed. Well, they're in this house, and we're learning more and more about the family, things going on behind the scenes. And the daughter, Chloe, starts to notice that there's a presence in the house. And the entirety of the film is after she figures out there's a presence in the house, how does the family respond, and what occurs afterwards. So like I said, I really enjoyed this movie, despite the fact that I think that it is flawed. But I'm going to start off by talking about the positives of the film. For starters, I love how dreamlike the cinematography is in this movie. It's obviously done Steadicam. It doesn't feel super shaky, so it didn't feel like it was handheld, but it definitely had to be some kind of Steadicam that Soderbergh was doing to film this, because you just feel like you're floating through the entire movie. And I really like that. It has this like haunting, ethereal quality, very dreamlike, and I love the attention to detail in the cinematography and a lot of the lighting in this movie. A mixture of natural light, the color temperature in moments is incredibly warm, and it's interesting how inviting the film is, despite the fact that the subject matter towards the third act gets very disturbing and uncomfortable. It's almost alluring you in to settle you down so that it can just break you apart in the third act, which is what I really appreciated about the movie. I really like the utilization of sound design in this as well. There's a lot of attention to detail in like the creaks and cracks and the floorboards and just everything about the personality of the house. When you're in the POV of the spirit or the ghost or whatever, you want to hear what the family is experiencing as well. And so I liked that. I think those little bits of attention to detail make the movie a really immersive experience. As far as the performances go, Callina Liang, who plays Chloe, the young daughter, was really the standout in this movie. She is incredible. Everything surrounding her character, she does a really great job. And Sullivan, who plays Chris in the movie, the father, he was also fantastic. I feel like they were the two standouts. I wasn't a huge fan of any of the other performances in this movie. Even Lucy Liu, I felt like her performance, like, she was just doing a little bit too much to where she came across as inauthentic. The actor who played the son, I feel like he was hamming it up a little bit too much. He was supposed to be asshole, but it came across in a way a lot of times that just felt very inauthentic. And then the daughter Chloe starts dating this kid who he becomes a very big part of the movie in the third act. And I was not a huge fan of his performance either. He sort of settled in towards the third act where there were elements I appreciated more about his performance, but like for the most part didn't work for me completely. But I think despite some of those critiques, the entire cast works well together. And where this movie really succeeds is in its meditation about grief and loss and trauma. The daughter has experienced her best friend died of mysterious circumstances, and she's haunted by it. And she believes that the presence in the house is her friend lingering around trying to remind her, like, hey, I'm here, like, I miss you. And it causes tension in the family. The father is incredibly close to Chloe. The two of them have a very inseparable relationship, but Lucy Liu, her character, and the son are inseparable. And she doesn't have a very close relationship to her daughter, and she is obsessed with her son's success. And her son is an asshole. He is a terrible, just mean-spirited, awful human being who treats his sister terribly. And there's like a distinct separation in the family where they're kind of taking sides. And there's something going on with Lucy Liu's character, that she's in some form of legal trouble. We don't 100% know what it is throughout the entirety of the film, but it's causing a separation in the family. And the dad is kind of researching, like, what would happen if I'm incriminated? And so you're getting all of these different perspectives, which create a really intense dynamic. And that's what I really liked about the movie. And then once this boyfriend character is introduced, there's this whole part of the movie that is affiliated with like gaslighting and utilizing someone's trauma to manipulate them. And that was a really fascinating commentary on top of all the meditation of grief and like family relationships. And that was what really immersed me into the film. My issue with this movie is everything surrounding the ghost, where we go in the third act. It's a little goofy. Like the ideas that are introduced by this person who comes over and essentially acts as almost like a medium to find out what's going on in the house. The way that she sort of conveys how spirits operate, you really have to suspend your disbelief. And I know there's some people out there like, we're uncertain of the afterlife, and sure, but it's still a little bit too much, like the way that they explain it. And then when things kind of go off the rails, which might be my biggest issue with the movie, is I feel like in the third act, when the boyfriend of the young daughter, his whole plot line comes into play and things just kind of blow up in a really extreme way, it's almost like Soderbergh incorporated that so that a mainstream audience would be like, hey, this is a horror movie, and it's also like deeply disturbing. Where I feel like the movie was at its best was when it was very quiet and meditative. And I don't think it needed a lot of the things that happened in the third act. I'm fine with it for the most part, but I was so much more interested with what was going on earlier in the film than anything that happened in the third act blow up. And the ending, it took me a minute to sit and think, okay, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I had to think about what characters said early on in the movie to kind of piece together where Soderbergh was going. And if you sit with it, logistically, you can understand what they were going for, even though it still feels a little convoluted. But aside from that, like I said, I think it's a really interesting meditation on grief and like family relationships, and then the whole subplot involving gaslighting and manipulating someone who is at their lowest point. I appreciated all that about the movie, and I think like it would be something that I would revisit in the future. It's not Soderbergh's best by any means, but it's still an entertaining movie. Just don't go into it expecting a horror film. It is very much a drama with some suspenseful moments in the third act. So have you seen Presence? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I really enjoyed this movie despite the flaws that it had. I've been thinking about it since I watched it, and I definitely think it's worth your time to check out. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.